All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're basically becoming intellectual detectives. We're going to crack open the Talmud and follow the trail of a single cryptic sentence through this amazing maze of ancient logic. And what we're going to find is how it unlocks not one, but two totally different laws. It's a real case of biblical code cracking.
So, this is the big question, right? This is the heart of the mystery. How can one little verse from the Torah be doing double duty? It's a puzzle that honestly pushed these ancient scholars to the absolute edge of their analytical abilities, and we're going to follow right in their footsteps to see how they did it.
Okay, so our investigation starts with what looks like a really simple rule. It comes from the Mishnah, which is kind of the foundational text, the bedrock of Jewish law, and it's all about the special flour offerings that were brought to the temple in Jerusalem.
So at first glance, this is totally straightforward. You're making a sacred offering. You can't use any leaven, like yeast. Simple. The dough has to be flat, kind of like matza. The Mishnah even points us right to the verse in the Bible that says so. You'd think, okay, case closed, right? Well, not so fast.
Because this is where it gets really interesting. The later scholars, the ones who wrote the Gemara, which is this huge, incredibly detailed commentary on the Mishnah, they just weren't satisfied. They had a feeling there was more going on under the surface. And when they started digging, they found a major puzzle that kind of threatened to unravel the whole thing. One of the heavy hitters, a sage named Reish Lakish, he points to a completely different verse, this one from a few chapters later in Leviticus. And he says, this verse teaches us something new, that even the part of the offering that the priests got to take home and eat couldn't have any leaven in it. Okay, seems clear enough. But wait a minute. And boom, here's the problem. The Talmud immediately says, hold on, that exact same verse is already being used to teach a totally different law. And that other law says that if you illegally add leaven, you're on the hook for every single step of the process, the kneading, the shaping, and the baking. So which one is it? How on earth can one little sentence be the source for two completely separate rules? This apparent contradiction is what kicks off a classic, high-stakes Talmudic debate. You have to understand, for these scholars, the Torah isn't just a book. It's a perfect, divine code. And if there seems to be a contradiction, it just means they haven't found the right key to unlock its meaning yet. So the first theory they come up with zeroes in on the verse's weird phrasing. They argue that this is the key. Look, if the Torah just wanted to teach one thing, it would have been written way more simply. The fact that it's structured in this kind of clunky way, it shall not be baked with leaven, I have given it as their portion, that's not a mistake. That's a deliberate signal, a clever bit of engineering designed to teach both laws at the same time. Now, to get what happens next, you need to know a little bit about their toolbox. The rabbis didn't just make things up. They used a very specific set of logical rules to interpret the text, called hermeneutics. Think of it like the operating system for all their logic. And as you might guess, a challenger is about to grab one of these tools to try and poke a huge hole in that neat two-law theory. The challenge comes from this rule of interpretation called generalization and detail. It basically works like this. When the Torah gives a broad, general rule, like that first verse we saw that says an offering shall not be made with leaven, and then follows it with a really specific example, like our verse that says it shall not be baked with leaven, the principle states that the law only applies to the specific detail. So baking would actually limit the more general rule of making. And you can see how this creates a massive problem. I mean, if this rule applies here, it doesn't just mess with the two-law theory. It pretty much erases one of the laws completely. It would mean you're only guilty for illegally baking with leaven, but not for kneading it or shaping it. The whole logical structure they just built starts to crumble. So, to solve the mystery of the sacred dough, the sages have to take what feels like a totally wild detour. We're leaving the temple kitchen for a minute and heading over to a completely different part of the law, the rules for slaughtering animal sacrifices. It sounds unrelated, but trust me, it's crucial. A sage named Rabbi Aptariki steps up to defend the original idea. He says, whoa, hold on a second. That generalization and detail rule, it doesn't apply here. And why not? Because the two verses we're talking about, the general one and the specific one, are in different chapters of the Bible. He argues that this physical distance between them in the text actually invalidates the rule. Now that's a bold claim, and it has to be proven. And of course, somebody immediately pops up with an objection. They say, wait a minute, I can think of another case with sin offerings where we do seem to use this principle on verses that are really far apart.
And just like that, the whole debate has to hit pause while everyone does a deep dive into the nitty-gritty of where exactly certain animals had to be sacrificed. So now, this massive legal argument suddenly pivots to focus on a single, tiny word, the word it, odo in the Hebrew. In this super precise system of logic, a specific word like it can't be an accident. It must be there to teach you something by excluding something else. The question is, what is it excluding? And what follows is this incredible rapid-fire process of elimination. The sages throw out every possibility they can think of. Does it exclude that one-time offering from Prince Nahshon? Nope, that gets shot down. What about the location of the person doing the slaughtering? No, there's another verse for that. A bird offering? The Passover lamb? Each idea is brought up, put under a logical microscope, and one by one rejected. So after that long, winding, and frankly, exhausting detour through the laws of the northern side of the altar, they reach a conclusion. The objection fails. Rabbi Abderriki was right all along. That generalization in detail rule doesn't apply to our dough verses because they're too far apart in the text. The main challenge has been officially neutralized.
Okay, with that detour officially over and the biggest objection cleared out of the way, our detectives can finally return to the scene of the crime. It's time to crack the code of that verse with two meanings once and for all.
So here's the final piece of the puzzle. If the Torah only wanted to teach us one thing, that the priest's portion of the dough can't be leavened, it could have said it so much more simply. It would have looked something like this, just direct and totally unambiguous. But that's not what it says. The actual verse has this unique, slightly awkward phrasing. And now, with all the other logical challenges out of the way, the original theory is confirmed. The structure is 100% intentional. It's designed so you can read it two ways. One reading gives you the rule about being liable for baking, which then extends to all the other steps, and the other reading gives you the rule about the priest's portion. It is an absolute masterclass in legal and linguistic efficiency. So let's just recap that whole journey. We started with the mystery, one verse, two laws. The first theory was that the weird word order was the key. Then a huge challenge came up from a rule of interpretation, which forced us on that wild detour into sacrifice law. But that detour proved the challenge was wrong, which let us come back and confirm the final solution. The verse is a brilliant piece of writing that perfectly encodes two laws in one. And when you really step back and look at it, you realize this whole thing was never just about the rules for dough. It's a window into an entire worldview. It's about this deep, powerful conviction that not a single letter, not one turn of phrase in a sacred text is there by accident. Every tiny detail is a potential doorway to a deeper meaning, just waiting for a sharp mind to come along and figure out how to open it. And that really leaves us with one last thought to chew on. Is this just a fascinating look into an ancient, complex legal system? Or is it something more? Could it be a timeless model for how we should engage with any text that we care about? A model that teaches us to read slowly, to question everything, and to believe that there's always a profound depth to be found, if we're just willing to follow the logic, no matter how winding that path might be?